Good morning.
Happy Sunday. Glad to have you. Morning.
It is so nice to be here considering what the rest of our state has been through the last week.
I know, right? Wow.
I guess, speaking of perspective, the reality is my daughter had to miss school again this week, and we get to visit with her again. So until they get the
That's
power
good.
back on in
Yes.
Tampa, she gets to stay home.
Yay. Yeah, that's
And
good. That's good.
yeah, that's the good part.
That's good. Yeah.
That's the good part.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, some of our neighbors not so well off, but
Yeah.
we know that they will endure.
Mm, absolutely.
However, with all the news, I do find myself on the edge of tears more and more these days. But my emotions are not triggered by the massive destruction from storms or the inhumanity of war we are seeing on the news. I've grown all too accustomed to these reports. My skin has grown thick and my heart hardened to these seemingly daily experiences. A lifetime of challenges and disappointments have developed defensive emotional barriers to help me maintain my sanity, and I suspect most of you have done likewise. But I find with my maturing spiritual awakening, I am allowing myself the privilege of openly expressing the emotion of joy. Joy of simple things. The joy of my dog's happy dance whenever a family member comes home. The joy of human voices raised together in song, or just the harmonic cooperation of musicians practicing their craft. These things bring me to tears, and I no longer fight to hold them back. Joy is a natural state of spirit, and I welcome joy into my life. I am triggered each time I hear of neighbors helping neighbors and strangers helping strangers. My emotions are triggered when spirit overwhelms my defensive barriers with normal human responses to catastrophe. I am emotionally disarmed when I realize our natural spiritual state emerges when all our little human issues are set in proper perspective. Dorothy Day, an American journalist and social activist, wrote, "People ask, what is the sense of our small effort? The answer," she said, "is we must lay one brick at a time, take one step at a time. A pebble cast into a pond causes ripples that spread in all directions. Each one of our thoughts, words, and deeds is like that." You see, when our human issues are set aside, when whether we are male or female, rich or poor is immaterial, when we are stripped down to our basic humanity, we find unity. We find one brick we can lay together. And finding one, we find there are other blocks of cooperation we can lay side by side, one atop another, forming a foundation upon which we can continue to build. And the ripples expand outward, breaking through the complacency that has become our status quo. Our defenses are laid bare. Our comfort zones become uncomfortable. Spirit works in mysterious ways, and in this way, we are open to change. Depending on our perspective, change has different implications. And for many, change brings fear. Change takes us into the unknown. Change upsets our sense of balance and control. But for those of us who know their unity with spirit, For those who recognize their power, the power of the one within the one, within change lies joy. The joy of exploration, discovery, and amazement. It is the draw of this joy that is the power of the horizon. That pull to see what is around the next corner. It's why we wake up each morning. If not for curiosity, why are we here? The desire to grow and learn, that key spiritual principle is the undefinable force that drives us to explore and simply exist. The power of anticipation is fueled by the desire to find joy, to embrace this key principle of spirit. Spirit, you will remember, creates for us without consideration of our desires or motives. Spirit creates propelled simply by our whim, energized by our belief. Recently, I heard a prominent politician admit to a bold-faced lie he was promoting as truth in his campaign. Confronted by the truth, he confessed that sometimes we make up stories just to get attention. He must have been absent from school the day the class read The Boy Who Cried Wolf. If the politician knew that story, he would know that spirit acts on whatever story we energize, and when we energize a lie, spirit manifests the consequences of that lie as though it were truth. Oh, if only it possible for spirit to exercise some discretion. So, from time to time, we are laid bare and reminded, as 20th century poet Herman Hesse wrote, it is not our purpose to become each other, it is to recognize each other, to learn to see others and honor them for who they are. Who they are is another human being cast into this life to find their own way through the chaos that is life, with nothing more than a feeling to guide them. For some, that feeling is a strong connection to spirit. For others, it may be confused and misdirected by dogma, superstition, or simply common consciousness run afoul. Now, I suspect I may be preaching to the choir here, but this is my last opportunity before the elections in our country to express some spiritual truth. Science of mind reveals to us spiritual principles that are at work all the time, whether we recognize them or not. The Continental Congress, who founded our nation, recognized these timeless principles, and in the language of their time created a national constitution that reflected them. The Constitution establishes our form of government, but more importantly codifies certain human rights thought so central to their beliefs that the central or federal government, as they came to call it, is sworn to protect them. This is not a civics lesson, so I'll not be doing a deep dive here, but some high points deserve mention. The rights guaranteed by the Constitution are rights held for all Americans. It is not a privilege of the states to determine whether these rights shall be granted or not. Driving is a privilege. Carrying a concealed weapon is a privilege. It is within the purview of individual states to determine how these privileges are administered. These rights are not guaranteed by the national constitution, therefore fall within the purview of the states. The right to own a gun is protected by the U.S. Constitution and cannot be infringed upon by the state. However, the state can determine how and when those arms may be worn. Voting is a nationally guaranteed right. How or if one worships a god is a constitutionally guaranteed right. Imagine if those rights were turned back to the states. That trope has been tried and proven to fail. It is being tried again by many states now that the protections of Article 5 have been stripped away, and likewise, the right to privacy is a nationally guaranteed right. The right of a person to confer with their doctor or lawyer and have reasonable expectation of privacy is universal and not a privilege to be doled out by individual states. The right to pursue happiness is a cornerstone of our Declaration of Independence, and by extension, education and health care fall under the purview of universal human rights because no reasonable definition of happiness includes being infirmed and ignorant. It is a spiritual principle to have joy in our lives and to expand our horizons. The Continental Congress recognized these spiritual truths and wrote them into our founding documents. And the members of that Congress did span a spectrum of beliefs, and that spawned vigorous arguments. Arguments that at the end of the day forced compromises and imperfections, but included allowances for growth and expansion. The Congress recognized Spirit's proclivity for growth and recognized their own limitations. They knew they could not create something new upon, they knew they could create something new upon the earth, something that had never been tried before, and they knew there was no chance that they would resolve every issue on day one. So they built into their creation an open-ended, call it open at the top, contingency. Many of you know that the founder of the Science of Mind, Ernest Holmes, expressed the teaching as always is and always will be open at the top. He was admitting that how spiritual principles are taught must change over time. He lived when radio was supplementing the written word and saw television invading every home. In his lifetime, the ability to reach an audience expanded exponentially. Holmes could have only guessed at what the future held, but knew intuitively that his would not be the last word defining truth any more than our founding Congress could know what Spirit would reveal in each unfolding day. You know, one of our often maligned, but I think most beloved former presidents, Jimmy Carter, wrote, "So much that is good in this nation depends on the unknown actions of humble men and women who understand the importance of duty, done without public recognition or the blare of trumpets. The strength of our nation lies in our willingness to do what we must, each of us, each day, wherever may lie our particular duty." And with these words, President Carter is reminding us that our common consciousness is influenced by the beliefs each of us empowers. When we build on a foundation of fear, deceit, and misery, we build failure into our future. Spirit will create as we believe and deliver the consequences of our folly. No joy this night in Mudville. Spirit's candle stands snuffed out. The anticipated celebration crumbles all about. In case it is not yet clear, revenge and retribution are not spiritual principles. Some traditionalists may cite Scripture as permission, but those sentiments are primarily included in the Old Testament. You know, the part that came before the teacher Jesus brought forth the new messages. Of course, the course-correcting message reportedly sent down from on high by his Father, by his only Son, to save humanity from itself. Come unto me, saith the Lord, forgo the ways of the past. Salvation lies on this path forward into new and unexplored lands yet undiscovered. Okay, I added that last part, but Jesus could have said it if he'd had better writers. Each of us must take up the mantle of spirit and know joy in our hearts. See the majesty in a sunrise, or if you're more like me, the majesty in a sunset. Tune out the doom and gloom. Reach out a helping hand and recognize the little things, the unknown actions of humble men and women who act not for fame and fortune, but for the satisfaction of knowing Spirit is expressing love through them without judgment or prequalification. And recognize the rewards that follow regardless of how they manifest. This example from President Carter, again, when he observed, my esteem in this country has gone up substantially. It is very nice now when people wave at me, they use all their fingers. Recognizing that there had been a change in the way people greeted him. A minor thing, but significant enough to be observed and remembered and shared. Let tears of joy stream down your face and celebrate each victory of love. And that, sir, not evasion, misdirection, or fabrication, demonstrates a literary weave. Thank you for your kind attention.